Hi guys, and welcome to the second episode of the Silmarillion Abridged. Just to clear up some of the numbering here. So, mistakenly on the last episode, I may have originally put Chapter 1, the Ainulindali. Really, the Ainulindali and this episode, the Valaquenta, are more two parts of a prologue, So that's what we'll be doing today. Anyway, welcome back to Tolkien Abridged, the Silmarillion Abridged. Abridged by a Scot, that's me. I am the titular Scot, I am Rabu, and the mission statement for this series, Tolkien, wonderful, hard to understand. What else is wonderful and hard to understand? The Scottish, so here we go. So last time we had the Ainulindali, which was Tolkien's genesis, essentially, the creation of his pantheon, the creation of everything else from their music. They literally sang into existence. What a set of pipes the Ainur, now the Valar, now that they've descended on the world, have. And we get left on a bit of a cliffhanger. We're going to have the first ever war between the Valar and Melkor, the big bad. Going to take a slight sidetrack here. So the Valaquenta it's essentially the spotter's guide to Tolkien's gods. Essentially, he's taken us, he's pumped the brakes and he's went, right, before we get to the first ever war, I'm going to tell you about all these characters. I'm going to lay them out in front of you. You're going to be able to identify, which Valar is that at 600 paces? Is that Tulkas or is that Vardas? Is that Manwë or is it Melkor? You'll be able to tell. You'll know all the distinctive signs. So here we go. We'll jump right in. So we jump in and basically he starts to tell us about the 7 lords of the Valar and 7 ladies of the Valar. The Valeri, if you will. So on the guy's side, we have Manwë, Ulmo, Aule, Orome, Mandos, Lorien, and Tulkas. Pardon me. We met 3 of them last time. And on the lady's side, we have Varda, Yavanna, Niena, Este, Vaire, Vanna, and Nessa. So we also get a little note that Melkor used to be counted among them, isn't anymore, which is actually kind of good because now we have 7 and 7, 8 and 7. Would have been kind of irritating, so good job Tolkien, good job Melkor on being banished, etc. So we get a general rundown of everybody's gimmicks, everybody's what is this Valar like, what is that Valar like, blah blah blah. So we kind of start with that Melkor and Manwë were originally the top dogs. Melkor kind of gets a bit spoiled. Manwë, on the other hand, he gets Eru, he gets God, he understands, he is a zealot, he just gets it basically, and as such, like some people would call him a teacher's pet. I'm not going to throw that around, but like Manwë, live a little, and basically his whole thing is like air, birds, wind, mountains, all that kind of good stuff. His wife Varda, she's the Lady of the Stars, super fucking hot, like literally Tolkien goes on at length about you can't even describe how hot this goddess is. They live together in this fucking sick crib in Valinor. It's the first time we hear about Valinor. It's like the land of the gods, the undying lands. And they have this whole thing where Manwë's got this throne and he can look out, he can see so far, and Varda, she can hear so far while Manwë's on the throne and stuff. It's their whole like double gimmick thing, which is nice. And we get generally through this as well, we'll usually get like a little bit of lore about like, what does Melkor think of these people? Because these gods, these celestials. In this case, Melkor used to have the hots for Varda, which is understandable, but she basically, at some point, pre-world, came to Manwë's rescue, stuck the fingers up to Melkor, and Melkor's never really got over it, and apparently he is still deathly afraid of her. Some big incel energy from the Dark Lord here. But yeah, so that's their kind of gist. The next one we hear is about Ulmo. So we covered him a little bit last time. Basically Poseidon, second strongest Valar. Bit of a vagabond. No wife, no home, just hits the old dusty trail or the old watery trail. Basically only comes back when shit's really hitting the fan. And apparently that is quite the sight when he comes, out of the ocean. Not for the unprepared. But he generally still, even though he's solitary, loves the elves, loves men. And yeah, basically we'll occasionally like, have like a little jam on his seashells and stuff. He'll sometimes use like rivers and stuff as like a surveillance network. You know, just all the things that you would do if you were an aquatic entity. Next we have Ollie. So again, covered him a little bit last time. So he's like Hephaestus essentially. He's the kind of smith of the gods. We get a list of some of his greatest hits. You know, the walls of the mountains. Ever heard of those? The basins of the sea. Ollie's work. Some guy again. Quite the project guy. We get a little thing between like him and Melkor are apparently meant to be like really quite mentally similar. They both love to, you know, create new stuff, but eventually Melkor kind of becomes a bit of a hack, just starts copying everybody's homework and essentially loses his ability to actually create new things. So Ollie on the other hand just still going on strong. So his wife is Yavanna, basically nature goddess kind of thing. The Queen of the Earth generally appears as a woman robed in green, so we have our first official Celtic supporter in Tolkien, Mon the Hoops. Then we get a little, basically we get the emo kids of the Valar, so we get these guys kind of covered. So we have Lorien and Mandos, which isn't their actual names, they're just named basically for the place they hang out the most. Their real names are Namo and Irmo. But so Mandos, which we'll just call him because you know it's way cooler, he's essentially the Grim Reaper, he's the Hades of the kind of, you know, of this pantheon, hangs out in the halls of the dead, basically knows everything that's ever going to happen, knows how fucked everybody is, but he only ever tells them if Manwë goes like, you know what, Mandos, tell him how fucking absolutely knackered they are. And he will, you know, so bit of a chatterbox, but only on Manwë's time. Vairi the Weaver's his wife. She basically is creating this big massive bio tapestry of everything that's ever happened. Her job's getting taken over by AI at some point, let's be honest. She's going to be kicking her feet up. Then we get Lorien, so he's got a bit of a green thumb, he's got this lovely orchard and stuff that he lives in. Fans of Lord of the Rings might recognise the similarity between Lorien and Lothlorien, which I think that came from. But yeah, so basically that's like his whole deal. He deals with like dreams and visions and stuff. And his wife is a healer, that's Este, but basically she's a bit of a night owl. She just hangs out on this like island all day and stuff. They have these like replenishing fountains, so like if any of the Valar are, you know, like, God, I have had a hard time being a, you know, like cosmic entity / god today, I really just want to kick back and have a brew, then they go to the fountains there. So White Monster, I presume, is what they have on tap. So then we have Nienna, so she's like the last of the kind of emo kids. She's a bit of a gloomy guts. She's the first person to ever make sad music. Continues to sing it religiously. She'll be going to My Chemical Romance's next tour, definitely. And she hangs out by the halls of the dead and stuff as well, which, yeah, probably best place for her, you know, she doesn't really get out a lot. Then we come to the first mention of a very important character, especially in the early days of this story, so that's Tulkas. So Tulkas is essentially, he is the strongest, brawniest, and also just downright fucking stupid of the Valar. He's, you know, nicknamed the Valiant, you know, he's like, he doesn't need a horse, he doesn't need weapons, he uses his hands and his feet, but he is, you know, like, I think Tolkien doesn't lay too fine a point on it, but basically he's fucking daft. He's daft as a brush, he's mad as a box of frogs. His wife is Nessa. We don't really get much about her, she just likes deer and stuff, I guess. Then we have Orome, so he's like the huntsman of the group, loves his horses, his steeds, his hounds, his fucking war horns and shit. Here comes Orome. He's not as strong as Tulkas, but he is way, way angrier, so, you know, there's that. And his wife is Vanna. She likes flowers, I guess. Generally, you get like the little rundown of the gods, and then it's like, oh, and also, this is who they were married to. Anyway, so yeah, that's the 7 lords, 7 ladies, and we kind of get this little distinction as well, that there are 9 main ones among them. Well, there used to be 9, and then 1 was removed. I wonder who that was. So the 8 remaining really like big swinging dicks, head honchos, big cheeses, are called the Aratar, so that's, you know, the absolute best of the best, and that's Manwë, Varda, Ulmo, Yavanna, Auli, Mandos, Nienna, and Orome. So like Manwë's like the ceremonial king, but they're all pretty much, you know, kind of equal in power kind of thing. So now we're going to drop down a little bit. So the Valaquenta is generally, it's the spotter's guide of not only the Valar, but essentially their servants and, you know, attendants and stuff who are kind of like lesser spirits. There's fucking loads of them, so we only get like, you know, we only get details on a couple of them, but some of them may be familiar to you. So yeah, we get, you know, like, oh, you know, there were a couple that were really famous in Valinor, so like that's Ilmari and Eonwe. But the ones that are kind of more important among elves and men, which is, you know, this is the perspective the Valaquenta's from, the Eldar, are Ossi and Nuinen. So essentially they're a pair of married sea spirits, and Ossi is basically Diet Ulmo, he's Diet Poseidon. He's not as strong, sticks to the shallows and stuff. At some point Melkor kind of came to him and went, by the way, if you team up with me, you could have Ulmo's job. You could be the next Poseidon. And Ossi actually goes for it, but it takes his wife kind of saying, fucking get hold of yourself, for God's sake, like, come on. Melkor's obviously, you know, trying to sign you up for a fucking pyramid scheme or something. So, you know, like, no harm, no foul, Ulmo forgives him and stuff. But Ossi apparently still a bit of a dick, you know, and just, like, attacks seafronts and stuff occasionally, because, sure. And also we get a little bit of information about Whedon, and also the first name drop of the Númenóreans, who are going to become way more important, way down the line. We're talking, like, ages from now. So when they finally turn up, Whedon, the sea spirit, is going to be like, yeah, I got you, boys. But yeah, and then we have a couple of others who are kind of mentioned. So we have Melian, who's like a kind of like forest spirit. She's going to be really important in the Silmarillion, and that's kind of already mentioned. And the other one that's mentioned is Olorin, who is the wisest of the Maiar, which is fair because, you know, there are loads of them. So you can probably guess from that description who Olorin is going to be at a later date, you know. And then we finish off the Valaquenta with a very Father Ted Crilly type of way of doing it, and literally it's just a little section that just says, you know, and the enemies, you know, oh, and now we move on to liars. So of course, the big one that's mentioned here, Melkor, again, he who arises in might. That also mentions that, you know, he will have that name stripped from him, he'll be given a nifty new name by the Noldor. Also going to be very important, basically the Silmarillion is largely going to concern the Noldor, who are a specific subset of the elves. But yeah, he's going to get a new name because he's gonna do some stuff that, you know, people don't really agree with for understandable reasons, and they are then going to name him Morgoth, which means the black foe of the world, which is pretty fucking metal. So, you know, you kind of got to love that. The Noldor, famed for their craftsmanship, can also craft a pretty sick new name for people. So yeah, and we just get a little bit more detail about Melkor. Originally he wanted to control light, and then realised, oh wait, I can't literally keep light to myself. That's impossible, even for, you know, the strongest of the kind of primordial gods. So instead he specs into flame and darkness. So again, pretty metal. And yeah, we just get this little description of, like, back in the day, you know, when Melkor was like, essentially this war that we're about to see, for a large portion of it, Melkor is going to take on all of the Valar by himself because he's so fucking hacks OP, like, originally, before he squanders all his power, essentially. He is taking them, like, we're talking, like, Raditz versus Goku and Piccolo, but, like, in fact, no, we're talking, like, Nappa versus the Z Fighters, you know, we just easy, just, you know, whatever. And while that's going on, a lot of the Maiar kind of go like, oh, Jesus Christ, this guy is obviously going to win, I better come over to his side. And obviously Melkor gives them the honeyed words and stuff and all that. So we get the mention of the Valarokkar, so they're going to become the Balrogs later on, great spirits of flame. Shout out to the Lord of the Rings fans who will know the Balrog from the Mines of Moria, Durin's Bane. And then we get one more mention of one more Maiar, who, you know, you may have heard of again. He's a former disciple of Aule. He loves to craft things. Oh, who could this be? He originally goes by the name Gorthor the Cruel, but you may better know him as Sauron. the eponymous Lord of the Rings. And the fun part here is that Tolkien literally says one good thing about Sauron, which is he's not as bad as Melkor, he's not as bad as Morgoth, because, like, at least Sauron worked under Morgoth at one point. You know, he wasn't always all about himself, but then obviously kind of goes, oh, but also, you know, he's going to become the Dark Lord to Electric Boogaloo. So yeah, there we have it. That was the Valaquenta, the Spotter's Guide. You know everybody's gimmicks, you know their deals and stuff now. Those are the gods and their attendants and stuff, as seen through the eyes of the elves and men, generally. Yeah, so next time we're going to move into the Quenta Silmarillion, the history of the great jewels of the Silmarils, and that's going to be where the story properly starts. At this point, it's just been a bit of a prologue, kind of like, you know, obviously creating the universe and stuff, setting the scene, telling you about everything that's gonna, all the characters and gods and stuff that are gonna play the part early on. But yeah, so next time we'll be diving into the story proper for chapter 1. So I hope you join me again, guys. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed the Valaquenta, and I'll catch you in the next one.